Shalom. To the 12 tribes of Israel, worldwide. Hallelujah. It's good to be back. We are, man, it didn't seem like a whole week ago we were in Trinidad, but I guess it was. Last Shabbat, we were on the island of Trinidad, and we were meeting with the Mishpacha down there. Had a chance to hang out with our Okotis, and had a chance to hang out with the brethren and Hakis, and it was tremendous. As a matter of fact, we are excited about the fact that there is a fellowship from the Ark that is developing in the islands. And it's a beautiful thing to know that people worldwide are waking up to their true identity, and the Most High is bringing a lot of them out of false doctrine and false religions. We had people who had been caught up in the Christian falseness of the Christianity, the falsehood of Jehovah's Witness, the falsehood of some Hebrew camps, the falsehood of some of what's called primitive religions. And these people are waking up and looking around them and saying, my goodness, what have I been learning in all my life? And the answer is nothing. You've been indoctrinated by a system that is against our King. It's against Torah. And therefore, we have the responsibility of coming out of that as we wake up to the truth of Torah in these last days, to the truth of whose we are, Zion, and who we are, why we're here on the planet at this particular time. So we give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Yah for that. Also, as always, I want to thank those who are supporting this work. This is a labor of love on behalf of the Ark here in Fresno, California. But we know that taking this message worldwide in person is very, very expensive. Now, just doing the computer from the iPhone, we just got to keep paying the bills, and we can do that. But if we're going to get on airplanes and get hotels and food and travel and all that kind of stuff, it does take funds to do it. And so, in order for us to travel and see people face to face and to help encourage them, and it be the same when they encourage us, that does take the support of everybody. So if everybody does a little, then a whole lot will be done. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. Do your part. Everybody just do their part in support, and I know that Yah will make everything work out. I want to have a word of prayer to the Most High Yah before we begin our message on today. So if you don't mind, let's pray. Abba Yah, on this holy Shabbat, we come before your presence with thanksgiving. We come into your presence understanding that it's by your hand, the word grace, it's by you having taken the initiative to invite us into your house that we are here on this day. We thank you for our wonderful salvation that you have provided and that you have secured through our King. Hallelujah. And we thank you for the opportunity to wake up, to know who we are, whose we are while we're here. On this Shabbat, we seek to study and to read and to learn from your word. Open our hearts and minds to be receptive, that our ears hear what the Ruach is saying to the assembly from the very mouth and words of our King, Yahushua. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. At the, we're going to give you an opportunity to give and to support the work of the art. Those of you who are in the room, those who are watching live, you all can do that by just going to, I don't know why I have to think about this all the time, www.awakeningremnant.com. Hit the donate button and let the Most High move you in the support of the work, because it needs to be done. Also, don't forget to register for Sukkot that's coming up. Also, in Atlanta, I'm going to have Hulda give more announcements about that at the end of the message today. But register for Atlanta and also register for Florida. Those are the next two events that we have on our calendar. So we want to make sure that you all register so we can get a head count of how many people want to be there. All right. I want to look at this word. I want to look at this word in Matthew chapter 5, verse 19. Y'all gonna roll with me today? Yeah. All right, we're gonna do this together. Matthew chapter 5, Matthew in your English Bible, 5. Verse 19. We left off last week in Trinidad on verse 18. We're going to pick it up. We left off in verse 19. And very powerful, very insightful, very informative. Look what it says. It says, whosoever. Y'all say whosoever. Whosoever. I only heard two people. Say whosoever. Whosoever. Whosoever therefore shall, come on. Break. Shall do what? Break. Shall break. Whosoever shall break. Whosoever means anybody. Whoever does this. Whosoever. It does not matter if it's your pastor. It doesn't matter if it's the deacon. It does not matter if it's your Sunday school teacher. It don't matter if it's your Aunt Gertrude. It don't matter if it's your Grandpa Joe. Whosoever shall break. It don't matter if it's Bishop Big Bottom. It don't matter if it's, Pastor All That. Everybody is in the whosoever. Shall break. I'm reading that. One of these least commandments. Now, I dealt with that last Shabbat to let you know that the idea of great and least when it came to the commandment is not equal to important or unimportant. Because some people want to then categorize commandments, saying, oh, this is a big one, but this one is a small one. That's not what he's saying here. There are some commandments that are known, and there are other commandments that are not as known. There are emphasis on and some that they don't emphasize, but the idea of a least commandment, meaning insignificant, is not the emphasis that he's putting here. Now, he will use that term later, but here he is talking about those commandments that are not as known, or the commandments that people feel that they have a right to move aside. That is the actual Hebrew word. He says, anyone shall break one of those commandments. And then this phrase, and shall, come on.
Teach.
What?
Teach.
And shall teach. So it's bad enough to be a lawbreaker yourself. But then to turn around and teach other men to be lawbreakers. I mean, it's one thing to be a criminal, but then to teach other people how to commit crimes. What's with the children? What y'all mean? I'm trying to preach the gospel. Y'all need to go down.
They preaching too.
The whole world is trying to figure out what the king is saying, and they hallelujah for the children. I'm glad they're here, because they could be somewhere else. He says, and teach others. The idea that you would have the nerve to set aside one of his commandments and then get in a position of authority and tell other people to set it aside also. Unless you Christians think I'm just talking about evil men, I want you to know I'm talking about you too. We have 10 commandments that are given to us in like a unit called the 10 Commandments. It's like on tables of stone. The 4th commandment says, remember. Oh, someone said, remember. But y'all done forgot. It said, remember. Zakar in Hebrew, remember the Shabbat. And just in case you think he's just talking about remember to rest, he says remember the day of rest, which is the Shabbat. Remember the Shabbat day. 2, remember it, why? 2, keep it separated from all other days. That's the word for holy. It's Qadesh in Hebrew. So the idea that the whole world of Christianity, most part, have laid aside one of the 10 commandments. And when a person shows up into the congregation and read Exodus chapter 20 and ask the pastor, they say, oh, we moved that day. We don't do Saturday anymore. We now do Sunday. So what you did was you set aside what you considered to be a least commandment. Zion, did you catch that? So you and I have to be careful, even as woke Hebrew Israelites, that in our everyday life and practice, we don't become guilty of setting aside his commandment and then teaching others to do it. He says, if you do that, you're going to be called, or you shall be called, the least, there it is, in the kingdom. that particular word, how do you say it in Hebrew? Hula, so I'll pronounce it right. This the word for least. Say it. All right, Zaire. I'm trying to get my pronunciations better. Zaire. Zai, Ayin, Yod, Resh. It literally means insignificant. It means small. It means low. It means tiny. So here you have the Hebrew idea of worthless. So the play on words here that the Messiah, our King, is using is that which is worth something versus that which is worth nothing. The illustration. Let me turn it down a little bit. There we go. The illustration that he's using, what he's doing is he's contrasting that which is worth something to that which is worth nothing. Those that break what they consider to be the least of the commandments, and then presume the posture of a potentate or a preacher to share then with their pupils the idea that they can also set aside and break the commandments. You become worthless. In the kingdom. In other words, you ain't helping at all. Wait, let me say one more time. I said you're not helping at all. The word gadol in Hebrew is the word that literally means great. Most of us know it because of the gimel, meaning to lift. It has the idea of to exalt or to help. We get the picture of a camel. When you get on a camel and he stands up, he lifts. How do I know? I was in Israel and got on a camel. Yeah, I got on a camel. That thing was over his knees, you know, squatting down on his belly. Man said, go and climb up there. I climbed up on the camel. And he made some noise. He made some noise. He did like, did something like that. And that camel started standing up. It ain't what you think. You just go higher and higher. It's like, oh. So this was something they experienced every time they got on the camel. They experienced a lifting up. A rising up, if you please, above. And what is it that a teacher of Torah, or a person claiming to be a teacher of Torah, what should he be doing with his students? Exactly. Helping them to move from where they are rise above, watch this, get on the camel, not just so you can be up high, but camels have a unique ability to travel across very dangerous and hostile terrain. So, when you're lifted up by the camel, see it sounds like Gimel, you are then, it has the ability, because of its humps and all that, to go long distances across very, very hostile and dry terrain to help you, as the rider, make it to your destination alive. Another picture of being worth something to the Hebrew was the picture of a rope. A rope is worth something, it has value, because if you fall into a pit and a person, and it's a deep pit, and a person walks by and just look over in the rope, in the pit, and he ain't got no rope or nothing, and just look in and say, boy, do your best. Brother Gene, all I'm trying to say is all that talk is sort of worthless. Many times we spend more time trying to figure out how the fella got in the hole. I told you should be watching out for the pits. But no gimbal, no rope. It's worthless. You know what? I knew that fella, by the way he was living, was heading for the pit. But no gimbal. It was worthless. Just talk. What he needs is help. That's the point. And what you're supposed to do when you find your brother in the ditch is what that Ethiopian, that Hamitic man did when Jeremiah was in the pit. He went and found out how can we lift the prophet out of the pit. Not talking about how he got in the pit. And he tied some rags together and made a rope and lifted him. Watch this. Anybody who helps Zion like that is considered to be great in the kingdom. Here's the word. You're worth much. But anybody who is willing to set aside the laws of Yah, even if it's just one that he considers to be small and insignificant, watch this, makes him small and insignificant. The law that he thought was worthless, if he thinks that, then he himself has become worthless.
And that's good.
All he's doing is, I heard brother say, bumping his gums. But he's not helping at all. When I saw this text, I was like, that's what I'm talking about today. I'm going to talk about worthless in the kingdom. Worthless in the kingdom. No value to Yah or your brother at all. Worthless. Just talk. Or just singing. Or just dancing around. But when it's all said and done, you're worthless to the kingdom. Big old huge church. Got a big shining chandelier when you walk in the forum. Children's church. Brotherhood. Choir. Usher boards. Pastor's anniversaries. Church anniversaries. Special day, annual day. Raising money day in and day out. And when you boil it all down, as far as the kingdom is concerned, it's worthless. Why? Because you set aside the commandments of Yah. So while you may have had a good time coming together, laughing and joking, singing and praying or whatever, if the people were not taught how to keep the commandments, then your gathering was worthless. What'd you learn in church today? I learned we don't have to keep the law. If you should have stayed home. Because that's the worst thing. Matter of fact, I almost titled the message, "The Worst in the Kingdom." Because there is no teaching in the kingdom of Yah worse than saying you don't have to obey your king. You all won't do that in your house. The rules of my house is all my laws have been done away. Why are you laughing? That didn't even sound right. No. What's the rules of the house? Now that I'm in the house, what's the rule? The rules is ain't no rules.
Whatever you want to do. Whatever you want. You put it out.
Then you got a weird idea of this word love. The rule of the house is just love me. Do whatever you want. No. You can't love me and shoot me at the same time.
Sure can.
You can't love me and slap my kids.
Okay.
Y'all get it? Y'all go run. Watch this. You teach your children instinctively. You teach them to obey their parents. When a child grows up and goes to school, how long would you leave them in a class where the teacher is teaching them to disobey the laws of the land? How long would you leave them there? Would you let them get past kindergarten? If they was in kindergarten, you walked into class, and the teacher of the kindergarten class was telling the children, now listen, this nation got a whole lot of laws, but they don't mean nothing. Drive as fast as you want, steal whatever you want, lie, cheat, it doesn't matter. Why? Because here, yes, we have laws, but you're in this country by grace. You'd be like, what did you just teach myself? So let's say you let the child get past kindergarten. Because say it slipped on you. You wasn't paying attention to kindergarten because you wouldn't think they would be teaching that in kindergarten. And now that child's like in the 6th grade. And every time that child come home and talk to you, they have developed a mindset that now is completely different than yours. You say, son, would you please take out the trash? You can't tell me what to do, Dad. Because in class today, they said as a child, I got my rights. And I don't have to obey you as a parental figure. And if you don't like it, I call the authorities on it. See, I'm making you uncomfortable on purpose just now all over the world. Parents got on the edge, and I'm just making this is a hypothetical, and parents looking around for their child just, I wish, why? Doesn't make no sense, does it? Immediately, what you would do is you would go over the child's head to the instructor and say, what did you teach my child? Because what you taught them, number one, got them a whooping. Can I say that? What you taught them got them in trouble. But I'm really trying to deal with you now. I never shall forget Jasmine. She was in high school. Came home one day and said, she said, Dad, we learned something in school today. I said, what is that? She said, we learned today in school that as a teenager, we can have a lock on our bedroom door. I said, is that right? She said, yes. And I said, who told you that? She said, our teacher told us today that as a teenager, we can have a lock on our bedroom door. We need privacy. We need time alone. We need time away from. We can have a lock. And I said to her, your teacher is correct. You can have a lock on your bedroom door. But you ain't putting a lock on my bedroom door. Did y'all get it? Because that room is mine. That room, and your, watch this, the room you sleeping in. Is not your room. But when you get your own room, you have a right to put a lock on your own. But do you understand, Zion, that any time someone teaches that you're no longer under the authority of a father or mother or a nation or a state of that, you see the danger in the teaching. And what you say is, that teacher is worthless. Oh, he's one of the best teachers we got. No. He's worthless. Because he's not helping, or she's not helping, he or she, they are hurting. The older I get, the more I start sounding like the old folk, and it trips me out. But I remember they used to say, if you can't help, don't hinder.
That's right.
If you can't help,
That's right.
don't hinder.
That's right.
In the text, our king is saying, if you are a lawbreaker, what is it about you that makes you feel like now you are responsible to teach others to break the law? If you cannot help, then don't hinder those who are trying. I could go on with that. In fact, I'm just going to give one illustration. I'll just put this out there so you can understand where I'm going with it. What we're supposed to be doing as those in authority We are supposed to be helping to assist Zion as they seek to walk in the path of righteousness. In other words, we're supposed to help them do what Yah has called them to do, which is to walk in his laws, statutes, and commandments. That's our job. When we see them struggling, the answer to the struggle is not, I don't understand why you're doing it anyway. It don't take all that. Or even worse, to say something like, those laws that you're trying to keep have been done away with. I want all Christians, let's listen to me, or ex-Christians that are still struggling, or anybody caught up in any man-made laws, rules, or religion to hear me. The, in quotations, law is done away with doctrine is satanic. I'll say it again. That whole, the law is done away with doctrine is satanic. When I say satanic, I mean it comes from the devil, Hasatan, and it's taught by demons. And whether you want to believe it or not, it is a demonic, satanic spirit that has now infiltrated most Christian religious circles, watch this, to where the teachers don't even realize that they're teaching doctrines of demons. The doctrine of the devil is seen clearly in Torah when you listen to how the snake challenges Chawah, which y'all know as Eve, concerning what? The command or the laws of Yah. Anytime any Hebrew or non-Hebrew fixes their lips to challenge whether or not Yah's laws are still in effect, you know you're dealing with a Hebrew who is obsessed or possessed or influenced by the devil's demons or influence. By Hasatan. Because that's what he's always doing. He's always somehow questioning everything Yah said. So he gets us to do the same. I mean, if Yah love you, why are you hungry? If Yah really cared about your feelings, what difference does it make who you date? If you really free are free in Jesus, how come you gotta die alone? You get it? The idea of always hearing something challenging the veracity of Yah's words. That's always going to be the case with the adversary, Hasatan, who then uses people to do the same exact thing. Now, I really want you to pay attention to this. Paul, when he talks about the penalty of the law, or when he talks about the law of sin and death and the law, Paul is talking about the consequences that were against you as lawbreakers before you came to the knowledge of Yah. And what he's really trying to get you to see is the law had already condemned you. And you were already following the devil. So why then, after realizing the situation you were in, and after realizing that it took Yah himself through Hamashiach. For the Bible clearly states that Yah was in Hamashiach reconciling the world back to who? Himself. That once we are reconciled to him, we are then to no longer live in sin. That's what he's trying to say. And when you read the text, good to see you. When you read the Hebrew text for real and stop playing with the Bible, you will see that from the opening verse of the Bible to the close of the Bible, the emphasis has always been the same. Keep the commandments of Yah. I'm glad folks showing up. We pause. I didn't get my message off the internet. I'm good. Pick it up right where I left off. It's good to see y'all. Hallelujah. Oh, these kids growing up on me. Y'all got a little more time, because I just did with verse 19. I haven't even got to verse 20 yet. But that's what he says. And I'll read it again. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and teach men so, he shall be called least, most insignificant. That's the word. Nothing, the bottom, worthless in the kingdom. But whosoever shall do, and teach them. Now, I want you to put a note in your Bible. Do implies knowing. Put a little note in your Bible by that word, do. Do implies knowing. And you cannot do without knowing. And what he's saying is, you should not know without doing. So what you learn in Torah, you don't know it until you do it. Did you understand that? That there's no such thing as saying, I know the Bible, or I know the scriptures, if you are not putting those scriptures into practice. Amen. It is the doing in Hebrew that is related to the knowing. If you're not doing, then the scripture says you don't know it. Then you have some people, watch this, who all talk. Well, they can talk a good game. One of the things that people say all the time, I listen to them, they say, when you share the word, they say, before you go any further, Mona, I just want you to know, I know this Bible. Whenever they say that, I say, oh, this person don't know nothing. In my mind. I don't say it out loud to them. But in my mind, I've already categorized them. They don't know nothing. Because anybody who would make that statement, that they know the Bible, and are not putting into practice the very laws, statutes, and commandments written in it, mean they must not know it. Because if they know it and are not doing it, you're looking at a fool for sure. So you know that the penalty and the wages of sin is death, and yet you're still on purpose going to practice sin? Figure out your mind. You don't know it. I've been reading the Bible a long time. Been teaching it over 30 years now. Watch this. I still approach the text like a child. And somebody said, well, I know you know the Bible. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm I'm learning. I mean, after 30 years of study? Yeah, and if I had 30 more years, I would still be just scratching the surface. So to do the commandments and to teach others to do then makes you great. It makes you one that can assist. That's my point. It makes you one that can help somebody to where you now have worth. But lest you think I'm just talking, let's look at James. This is his name, Yaakov. Well, they did a job on him, didn't they? They just erased his name altogether. Man, woo, them Europeans got a hold of our book and wreaked havoc. Took out Yah's name, put the Lord. At least they could have wrote the king. Kings are overlords. They call the name of the Bible King James, but they call Yah Lord. Oh, that's he wreaked havoc in our text, I'm telling you. But look at this word in Hebrew. I mean in James. Let me see here. Let's look at chapter 1, verse 22. Let's start there. But be ye what?
Doers.
Talk about, huh?
Doers.
Oh, so you learn about Sukkot. You talk about somebody. Oh, I heard about Sukkot. So where'd you learn it? Man, I was talking about it when I was in school or in church or whatever. So did you keep it? Well, no. So you learned about Sukkot, but you ain't keeping Sukkot. How about Passover? Yeah, I learned about Passover. You keeping it? No. But the text says, be, come on.
Doers.
Of what?
The word.
Which is Torah. And,
Not hearers only.
comma,
Deceive
what?
yourself.
Yeah, you ain't fooling nobody, deceiving nobody, but you thinking you're righteous as a hearer and not a doer. Oh yeah, we should know about this stuff, but we don't have to do it. Let us go to chapter 2, verse 14, same book. What does it say? What does it?
Profit a man.
My brethren, come on.
Though a man say he hath faith
Uh-huh.
and have not works.
Now that's a rhetorical question. In other words, the answer is implied in the question. What is it profit to say you have faith and not work? The answer is nothing. The answer is it's worthless. The answer is it's useless. Can faith save him? Can just having a particular disposition in your head of faith without works, does it help anything? Let's look. Verse 15. Come on. Oh, by the way, to James, faith was not just a word or a concept. Faith was a lifestyle. It was how you lived. And let's see what he says. Let's see what he says. If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of, roll with me, daily food, and one of you say unto them, what?
Depart in peace.
Shalom. be warm, and be filled. Notwithstanding, you give them not those things which are needful to the body. Here's the question. What? What does it profit? Anybody running around talking about, man, I'm praying for you, peace, shalom, go in peace, and you ain't helping? How's that profitable? Because you feel better because you said some words? So therefore, Zion, we see here that the Bible tells us, our king is telling us in verse 20, in verse 19, that it's the ones who do and teach. The same shall be called great. Now, you may not be called great in the world, but you'll be great in the kingdom of heaven. You may not be called great in your church. Matter of fact, you might get kicked out of church if you start teaching the commandments and doing them. But you will be great in the kingdom. You may not be called great in your family anymore. They may kick you out of their circle, may not call you, may not invite you to the birthday party no more. But that does not mean that you're not great in the kingdom. You may be put out of your circle at work or in school. But that does not mean you're not great where? Called great in the kingdom of heaven. Now, go to verse 20, and then I'm going to show you this, and we'll bid you farewell on this Shabbat. All right, verse 20 says, for I say unto you that except your righteousness, roll with me, shall what?
Exceed the righteousness of
the scribes and
the Pharisees.
Come on.
Ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of Shamaim.
Wait. Did he say there's a condition for entering into the kingdom? See, I was told all you had to have was faith. All you had to do is believe. But the king is saying, no, if you want to get in the kingdom, your righteousness. The word righteousness, I think, in Hebrew, literally means the remembering of the right path, if you please. The walking according to Torah. Yeah. Righteousness, remember, is always connected to Yah and Torah. Unrighteousness is always connected to being off the right path. So, he says, unless your righteousness, which means unless, it tripped me out, these boys get so big. Unless your righteousness, unless your walk with Yah, watch this, in accordance with Torah, keep it in context, he's talking about the commandments. It has to exceed that of the Pharisees. Now, this is what tripped me out about this text. As I studied the life of the Pharisees, I realized something. Number one, before we proceed with these Pharisees, I need to do something. I need you all to do your best to erase from your mind the European Jewish person with these locks that are made with curlers and not natural locks, with these big funny hats. I need you to erase your mind, erase that picture from your mind when you think of a Pharisee. I need you to erase that. I need you to take out this picture of these Jewish ceremonies and customs. and doctors of the law and all that. When I use the word Pharisee, that weird picture pops in your head, take that out. The Jewish people today are not the Pharisees of Yeshua's time. While they may have inherited some of that Pharisaical spirit, they are not the original Pharisees of the scripture. What you see today as Judaism is a man-made religion that was put together by some men who lived in Babylon. Watch this. Not during the captivity, as what is commonly believed, but who lived in Babylon after the death, burial, and resurrection of our Messiah, Yahushua. Watch this. 200 years later. I'm trying to help Zion. This goes out worldwide. Somebody in South Africa needed to hear this. Somebody in the Holy Land got to hear it. Somebody in India got to hear it. China has to hear it. Russia has to hear it. The United States of America, South America, all the islands, listen to me. Judaism is exactly that, an ism. Judaism is an ism. I-S-M. An ism is a distinct practice or system or philosophy or some type of political ideology or an artistic movement. Isms are birthed from man. Judaism, by its own definition, has to come from a man somewhere. Why? Because if you trace Judaism back, the word Judaism has in it Judah. Now, whether you're talking about the tribe of Judah or the city, or I'm sorry, the nation of Judah, Yehuda, right? You're still dealing with a system of thinking or religious belief that comes from a particular group of people. And may I say this, Judah, as one of the tribes of Israel, the fourth tribe, not one of my cousins, because we all from Judah, not one of my cousins have the final say on Torah. So my cousin gonna show up on the scene and come up with some new doctrine. We're gonna be like, hey, cuz, where'd you get that from? Oh man, I was just praying the other day and I realized, I thought, no, we don't care nothing about what you think. Every ism has their own book. We don't have an ism. I don't even know how you would even call our book an ism. So what would we be? Abrahamism? What would we be called? Yahwism? Y'all get the point I'm trying to make? Our record is before man. Our record is established in the Shamayim, given to us in Torah. Watch this. Not from Moses, but through Moses. And if you think Moses Moses is the lawgiver, then explain to me how he himself couldn't get in the promised land. Oh, because when he said, you rebels, must we give you water from the rock? Y'all was like, hey, dude, you tripping. I know you frustrated and everything, but you don't have beside yourself talking about we. And I didn't tell you to hit that rock. I said speak to the rock. Which means then, Moshe himself was under a greater authority. That even when he, what some people think is the lawgiver, no, listen, even when he disobeyed Torah, he had to come under the consequences of Torah. And when you climb up on the mountain, you can look over. Now I'm just saying me, if I've been me, after 40 years in the wilderness, I'd have been cussing. I'd have been fussing. They would have had to end the record on me right then. And it would have said something like this. And when he found out he couldn't go in the land, he cussed everybody out from the greatest to the least. Then he went around with a bat and began to just beat the ones that he had been praying for the last 40 years. That would have been my record. They pushed him to the edge and he lost it. That would have been my record. 40 years he tried to hold it, but he couldn't. But no. Moshe was more meek. But even in his meekness, as a breaker, as a lawbreaker himself. Now, did he teach people to break the law? No. So we don't say we are following Moses. That's my whole point, to get that long thing. We don't claim to be following Moses. Our claim is we follow the Most High Yah. Judaism is an ism that was started 200 years after the death, burial, and resurrection. It began when their teachers, which they call sages, came together, put together a book called the Talmud. The Talmud. And in the Talmud, what they did was seek to interpret the oral traditions that have been added to the law. Did I say that too fast? In the Talmud, they seek to take what orally was being spoken, and they wrote what they called a commentary on it. And they didn't start the commentary until 200 years after the death, burial, and resurrection of our King. Every ism has their own book. Mormonism have their own book. Jehovah's Witness, they got their own book. Catholicism, they got their own book. Everybody has, all these man-made religions have to produce their own books, because that's the way you get people to follow you. Now, I'm going to show you something. One more thing about the Jewish people who say they converted to Judaism. They converted to that which was written in the Talmud. By their own admission, not mine. They submit themselves to the Talmud over the Torah. I knew y'all was going to look at me like this. That's why I got it written down. This ain't from me. This is their website. Chabad.org. This is a Jewish website. The Talmud, is a collection of writing that cover the full gamut of Jewish law and tradition, compiled and edited between the 3rd and 6th century. That's CE. Our king been dead, buried, and rose again, seated on the right hand of power for almost 200 something years before they sat down and compiled this. Not my words. Talmud is Hebrew for learning, appropriate for a text that people devote their lives to studying and mastering. The Talmud. The main text of the Talmud is the Mishnah, a collection of terse teaching. That means sharp or quick or to the point teaching, little short segments of teaching, written in Hebrew, redacted by, and here's his name, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince. It's on their website. In the years following, not before, in the years following the destruction of which temple? The second temple. Not my words. It's on the website this morning. Pull it up. The second temple destruction was the one we read about in the text. That's the one the Messiah said was coming and did come by the Romans in 70 AD. They're telling you this book didn't get together. The folk didn't put this together till after. But because we don't know our history, because we don't know the first temple from the third temple to any of us, we like, that mean nothing, don't mean a lot to me. Because I'm trying to figure out where they got it from. Watch this. Y'all still with me? Over the next several hundred years. Did you hear that? The rabbis continued to teach and expound. Many of those teachings were collected into two great bodies. The Jerusalem Talmud, containing the teachings of the rabbis in the land of Israel, and the Babylonian Talmud, featuring the teachings of the rabbis of Babylon. These two works are written in Aramaic dialogue. Did I make up this? Or did I pull it from their website? Used in Israel and Babylonia, respectively. There are many commentaries written on the Talmud, mostly on the Babylonian Talmud, which is more widely studied. And it says, notably, the elucidating notes of Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhak of the 10th century. 10 centuries, Zion, is 1,000 years. They're talking about following a book that's been completed, that was not completed until 1,000 years after our Messiah was crucified, buried, and resurrected. See, they make you think that the Talmud is the same age as Torah. Not true. Not my words. I told you, type this in and look it up. You can, if you wanted to, those of you watching me at home, y'all can read along with me. I didn't alter this at all. Watch this. It says, 10th century France. France? Where's that in the script? You mean they put this thing together 1,000 years later in France? say my words. They're telling you, man, they was working on this thing for hundreds of years. Started in 200 AD into the 3rd century, and then they said it wasn't finished until 1,000 years later, or 800 years later, in France. Tosafot, a group of rabbis who lived in the years following Rashi, many of whom were his descendants or his students. These two commentaries are printed with the Babylonian Talmud surrounding the main text, and having become a part of the study of the Talmud, the standard edition of the Babylonian Talmud comprises 2,711 double-sided pages with many, many more pages filled with the teachings of other commentators. Now I'm going to skip some of this because y'all can go and read it yourself. It's a long writing. They're going to give you all the information. Just how it was written, when, what they had to do, all that. Just, it's what they said, the writing of the Talmud. For over 1,000 years, from the days of Moses until Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, no one had composed a written text for the purpose of teaching the oral law in public. That's a lie. So you ain't never heard of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Philip? What? I mean, what? Y'all ain't never heard of James? Peter? You do know all these folks spoke, right? And they all wrote. And they all publicly expounded on Torah. Somebody, oh, so you never heard of Yeshua, who more than any human, I don't know about this prince dude they talking about, but my king, ain't nobody expounded on Torah like him. Y'all been to hear in the next few weeks. I'm trying to get to this last verse. It's long. Talks about why it doesn't cover all of the teachings of the Torah and how they hold that teaching now higher than the Torah. It's all in here. This is what I want to close with. I'm going to show you that. At the end of the article, it says, after the death of Ravina II and the completion of the Talmud, no further additions to the Talmud were made, and the Talmud was not to be disputed. It's not from me. It's Chabad.org. You can read it with me right now. It was not to be disputed. So man wrote it, started 200 years. They went back and forth for almost 1,000 years. And when they finished that, now don't you question what I wrote. Who are you? I'm going to question what everybody wrote. The sages of the succeeding era, known as the Rabbanan Shavuot, however, added some slight additional editorial touches. Oh, really? But you said, don't touch it. Then they said, well, we might need to do a little bit of editing. It's in here. Such as subheadings from the Mishnah in places where the Talmud begins a new subject. The sages taught the teachings or ordinances and decrees which make up the Talmud, represented the totality of the sages of Israel. Oh, so what you're trying to claim is what y'all finished in France spoke for all of us Hebrews. All over the world. No, we beg to differ. Because the Most High had his seed scattered. And we were still holding the best we could to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High Yah. And we woke up to the truth. And we went back to the original text of the Torah. We found Revelation chapter 3 and Revelation chapter 2:9 and Revelation chapter 3:9 to be in full effect. This Talmud ain't never been the rule of life for us. We ain't never had how many houses y'all been to where the Talmud was on the shelf? But every house you went to, I'm talking about Hebrew, it was a Bible in there somewhere, wasn't it? Come on, let me finish this. It says, at least the majority of them, because of this, and because the Talmud was accepted as binding, watch this, not by y'all, by the entire Jewish people at that time, or at the time, its laws are considered binding on all Jews. It's right here. No matter where they live. And it is precisely this binding that has kept our Jewish identity strong for thousands of years throughout this long and bitter exile. May we merit the ultimate redemption speedily in our days. Those people who put that together, that this article so plainly explains, the group that did it, and that are now pushing it as equal to Torah, most of us believe that that's the group of people who was here during the time of our King Yeshua. That they were the people who were walking around on the same soil that he was walking around on. And so your mind gives a particular sense of honor. You have a particular level of admiration for people who have violated one of the very first rules to scriptural interpretation. Do y'all want to hear it? I showed you. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1. Zion, we got to do some calisthenics today. I know I've been busy. I've been traveling. I'm back at home. And I know y'all was ready for me to give a little quick message and sit down and say, oh, he tired. He'll go about 15 minutes. No, we're going to have to work this one out. Deuteronomy chapter 4. No rest for the weary. Deuteronomy chapter 4. Now therefore hearken, O Yisrael, unto the statutes and to the judgments which I teach you, not some rabbi later. For to what? Do them. That you might, chapter 4, verse 1, that you may what? Live. Oh, we already told what to do. So that we can live. And go in and what? The land which Yahuwah, Elohim of your fathers, giveth you. Verse 2. Come on. Wait. They said their whole book was based on. oral tradition, and for 1,000 years they added to the text until they completed it in France, and then told you, now it's done, don't add nothing to it. Oh, wait. So the king says, our Elohim says, I'm getting ready to give you a text, don't add nothing to it. But you said, no, I'm going to add something to what you say, but when I finish talking, then don't add nothing to what I say. Ooh, judgment day is coming, Zion. He says, neither shall you, what? Diminish aught from it. That's when the king, that's Yeshua, that's what Yeshua is saying, Yehoshua is saying in Matthew chapter 5. You diminish it. Same Hebrew word. You're the least in the kingdom. Why? Because you're breaking the very first principle of scripture interpretation. Don't diminish from it that you might, talk back, verse 2, that you might keep the commandment. The whole purpose of the scripture is so you'll keep the commandments of your Elohim, he says, which I gave you. You ought to keep reading that passage. Is so powerful. I don't have time to keep going, but if it's in verse 6, it says, keep therefore and do them. This is your wisdom, your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this is a great nation, a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great that has Yah Elohim so nigh unto them, that Yahuwah our Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments and righteous as all this law which I set before you today? Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, lest thou depart from thine heart all the days of thy life, but teach them, here it is, to what? To who? And who else? It said teach them to thy sons, and who else?
To thy sons' sons.
That means this should never stop. Today, we should be teaching the same thing to our sons that Moshe told the people that they should be teaching to their sons. He never said, teach this until Rabbi Prince show up, and then you can get rid of this and follow what he said. And by the way, he's not going to finish it in the Holy Land. It'll be written somewhere in France. Long ways to go to tell you one thing. When the Messiah was talking to the scribes and Pharisees, those were not the people he was talking about. Get that out your brain. That people group. They hadn't even come together yet. They hadn't even wrote one word of the Talmud yet. They had not had their meeting, whether it was in Babylon or whether it was in France or Germany or any other place. No. This was all before that. The Messiah here is talking to a group of men who, coming out of Babylonian captivity, Pharisees, had made themselves a sect, S-E-C-T. And the idea was, in the beginning, they would keep themselves separated from the rest of the world. Because Babylon had wreaked havoc in the mind of the Hebrew, to where after Babylon, you had some Israelites believing that they were now Babylonian. Just like after this captivity, you've got some Hebrews believing they English. No, Hebrew, you're Hebrew. So they don't know who they are. They've been messed up mentally. So the Pharisees said, no, we are going to stay separate from everybody, and we're going to teach the Hebrews. This was the original. We are going to teach them Torah. But what happened was this. Yah already had a system set up to teach Torah. It was a high priest, right? Then it was a king, or I should say king, high priest, and prophets. But they weren't satisfied with Yah's system. They created a new system called the Sanhedrin Council, made up primarily of what they considered to be the brightest minds. So what happened was this. Man got involved. And as soon as man got involved in the teaching of Scripture and was no longer held accountable to the teachings of Moses, watch this, the Pharisaical teachings started to be on par with Torah. The Pharisees never, ever consciously pushed Torah aside. Their sin was adding to it.
Yep.
Or taking away from it. They never came up with a new book and said, this is replacing it. What was going on among these Hebrews was mental. They had started this whatever we say goes thing. And they kept it under the cloak of Moses. Well, he was a lawgiver, so now we're sitting as lawgivers, we could make our own law. And they started adding to the word. They were not following the Talmud. They were following, at that time, their own traditions. I know time is taxing, so I'm going to let y'all know. The own traditions of man is where they were going. So much so that tradition started trumping truth.
Mm-hmm. Today.
So much so that tradition started trumping Torah. But every time the master went to them and challenged them, he always took them back to Torah. Here's my point. People are now teaching that the Pharisees were keeping Torah and Yeshua was bringing Christianity, and you had a clash between the Torah and the Christians.
Yep.
That's a lie from the pit of hell. There was no Christians. There was only those keeping Torah, and then there was a group of people, or breaking Torah, and there was a group of people adding to or subtracting, sitting in the seat of judgment. That's the group. They were so jacked up. They had got so far off base. They started. I'm going to do a part two. Because I got to touch this next week. I got to show you guys something about what he tells us. He said, your righteousness must exceed theirs. So we got to discover where theirs is. We have to. If we don't do that, then the scripture don't make no sense. Because this is the way Christians interpret that text. They say, these people were keeping Torah. So therefore, if you want to get to heaven, you got to break the Torah, because they was keeping the Torah, and your righteousness got to go further. So yours has to go by faith. So faith is greater than Torah. But I'm going to show you that their righteousness was not based on Torah. I'm going to prove it by the words of the king himself. The righteousness that Yah is requiring of us is the righteousness according to Torah, not the laws, statutes, and commandments of man. And he says, and if your righteousness don't go higher than that, don't even think about seeing the kingdom, let alone get in. You can't get in the kingdom. Forget it. And this is a word to you, those of you who are not going to tune in next week. I'm going to tell you now. Christianity is worse than Phariseeism. I'm going to say it again. Christianity is worse than the Pharisees. At least the Pharisees held the law in some type of respect. Even the worst of Pharisees would not have opened his mouth to say the law was done away with. So, this idea of entering into the kingdom, how about you fit to break all the laws? It don't matter. You fool yourself. And that's why I'm here and others that the Most High is using to wake up Jacob. Don't go to hell for being stupid. Don't make up stuff. Read it for yourself. Next week I'm going to show you what these Pharisees were all about that the Messiah was talking to us about, not doing. We'll talk about that. It's very important. It's not the Talmud. Get that out your mind. It wasn't here yet. There were traditions and attitudes and dispositions that was going on during that time that he said, this cannot continue among my people. Background verses for you to study. Write these down and we'll get together on this. Either Thursday night or we'll get together on this next Shabbat. Write these verses down. Luke chapter 11. Mark chapter 12. Matthew chapter 23. And let us discover the true teachings and doctrines of the Pharisees. You're going to discover it was not the Talmud. Yeshua tells us what they believed and what they taught and how it was on. Hate to leave y'all on a low note, but this is part one. We'll just have to hit part two. Either on next Thursday or on the Shabbat. Let us keep the word so that we won't be least in the kingdom, but that we can be called great because we've helped our brothers walk in the right path. Hallelujah.
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 Shalom. All right, Hula's going to come with some announcements, and then we're going to give you all an opportunity. I need my drummers to come up here. We'll give you an opportunity to share. Don't forget, those who are watching this, to go to the website, support, especially now we're going to be on the road again in a couple of weeks. We definitely need everybody to help us out. And, of course, Sukkot is coming. And so she's going to give you some more information.
Okay, 3, major announcements. Sukkot will be September 23rd through the 30th. You can go online and register. The information on the handout, everything is correct except for the date. So I know people are like, there's an October 30th thing. I keep forgetting to go and change it. But I fixed it once, but it's on a different page too. I know. Terrible. But September 23rd through the 30th. September 23rd falls on a Shabbat, so you can come 1 to 2 days before September 23rd. So you can come in on the 21st. We'll be out there. You can set up your tents if you're flying in from out of town. What else? Everything else in that packet is correct, so the packet's on there. For the sign-up registration for Atlanta, sign up. It gives us a head count It's also a safety measure. I personally wouldn't want to show up into a room with my children not knowing who's going to be in the room. Right? So the same thing for other people. Put your information there. Let us know. I'm not going to announce the address over the internet because I'm just a little weird like that. So, so with that being said, once you sign up, we will send out an email to the people that signed up with the address. If you don't sign up, you don't get the address. So please go on there and sign up. Don't sign up more than once. I see some people that sign up like 12 times. And it's on there. If you signed up and you click send, it's on there. You'll get an email. I'll make sure I go through and Hassan, you guys talk the whole time. Maureen is preaching, but I'm up here. And so he can whoop you because now he's not up. Thanks. Okay, so go ahead and go and sign up. And I'll send out an email blast for the people that signed up earlier if you didn't get the address, to make sure that everybody that already signed up gets the address. For Florida, we don't have a location yet. I have to reach out to a couple of people, and once we get some numbers on Florida, I'll have a better idea of where we will be meeting, and I'll send some information out. Two things. There's, I'll announce this after we got one. Any questions about Sukkot? If you have questions about Sukkot, email, be patient. Because there may be questions we can compile and do like a question and answer them all for everybody instead of sending out, 150 different emails for the same exact question. So what I'll do is I'll take the emails and about a week or so we'll go through and answer some of the questions that we're getting about Sukkot. Okay? If you are from out of town, you can mail your things here. So if that's something you'd like to do, email me and I'll send you a address where you can mail your tent and stuff. And we have Akeem who will assist in setting up your tents for you if you're flying from out of town. Yes.
I have a quick question. Do you park close to where, if you have a tent, where you have a tent?
Where you park, yeah, there's like a parking lot. So everybody, it's like the park. You can see the campsite from the parking lot. It's not like a walk, like a long walk. It's like 5 steps. It's like so you walk through your car. It's campsite. The parking lot is on the campsite. Exactly. Okay. Any other questions? Briefly. I can't see the people online. I'll go back and I'll look at your questions. And we'll put them in the question and answer. Of course, go. Okay. Anything else? Huh? Here? Yeah. Okay, so that's it for the people online. Shabbat shalom. Okay, we're gonna play music, so we're not gonna, and then I'll give you the other 2 announcements for the local people. Okay.
Wow.